Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes. Get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Gonna sit cheek to cheek right now.
We are cheek to cheek.
I don't think they meant that cheek to cheek in the song.
Oh. Do you guys know the song Cheek to Cheek? It's a great old jazz standard.
We're sharing a chair right now.
We're in our hotel room in Toronto, and you guys may be stoked that this is coming out actually at the beginning of the week.
What?
It's only because we've been out of town and I'm away from all my stress.
Well, we just got done with Camp Widow Toronto. We are tired, and we had a great time, and we're getting ready to go back home now.
Yep, I've had a lot of ketchup chips and a lot of candy bars.
Yeah, it's been good. Also, Japanese cheesecake. Who knew that was a thing?
I don't know, but our room smells so bad. Hey, I have a question. Can we talk about the existential crisis duck?
Yeah, I think we have to.
Because I don't even really know who started it. Was it Liz?
I don't know. There was a group of them, but the existential crisis duck has become our unofficial mascot. If anybody is wondering what that is, in the Widow Wives Club, it's the hot ticket item. It just comes from Amazon. It's this silly little rubbery duck that sits on a surface, a table or a counter or whatever, and it just looks like it's having an existential crisis, and it's just a very visual representation of what we basically all feel, basically.
Yeah, all the time. And it's a lamp, too. It's a touch lamp.
Actually, I love it for that purpose. Like in the morning, I can touch it and put it on, and it's not as bright as like a real lamp.
So guys, if you want to be part of the cool kids club, get an existential crisis duck. I don't think that's what you type in the search, right?
That's what I typed in the search.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
On Amazon?
Yeah.
And it came up?
Yeah.
Oh.
Even though it's kind of a knockoff. So at Camp Widow, we usually do one session, and we did that session, but they also asked us to do an additional session that would just be lighthearted and kind of a way to decompress from maybe some of the heaviness of the camp. And so we did the Widow We Do Now game show. We had so much fun. It was amazing. We had tons of people there, and the grand prize was an existential crisis duck.
Yes. So
and a Japanese cheesecake.
Yes. So thank you to whoever started that trend. Maybe it was Liz. Maybe it wasn't.
Phyllis, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Remind us. We can't remember anything. But it was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys, Anita is the best game show host ever.
It came with I had a costume, guys. It was amazing. And we have big plans for the future now. It involves a keyboard. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a Casio with no pedal. Which I don't know what that means, but Mel says that's bad.
Yeah. Well, I think next time we do it, I have plans for my music skills to enhance the game show, but I didn't have one this time. So.
Also, that's assuming that they want us to do it again.
They're probably going to be like, please stay away. But we have this idea. I will be the Paul Schaefer.
My David Letterman.
Even though you won't be David Letterman,
no.
You're going to be a creepy Richard Dawkins.
No, I am not kissing anybody on the lips. We did Family Feud. We did Widow Feud, and we did Wheel of Widowhood, and it was really fun.
How's it going, everyone?
Yeah. How's life in general outside of Camp Widowhood, Mel?
Oh, I love leaving.
Yeah.
I do so much better.
If you're just not home.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're going to go back home.
Here we go again.
I had some serious feelings this weekend, though, because I am away from my kids, and my son was in his school play. This weekend, we committed to Camp Widow a long time before the play announced their dates, and so I watched his play one on FaceTime, but it's not the same as being there, and I couldn't give him a hug, and he was so disappointed, and it just makes you feel like where's the balance, and what's the, who's the priority? And I feel like we're doing a lot of good here, and then at the same time I feel like, but then it comes at the expense of him and my kids. So I'm having some just feeling like I wish I could be two places at once, and not knowing how to deal with that. So
too bad you didn't bring your existential crisis duck.
I could have borrowed the one we used for the game show.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I know that although not widows, working moms feel like that a lot too, and so it's hard. And then you add widowhood on top of that, and it's like sometimes I remember somebody saying, I resented my mom for working, but then I was grateful that she did because I learned how to be self-sufficient. So it's like, well, is there a wrong answer in there? Is there a right answer in there?
There isn't a right.
I don't know.
What do you pick? But, the thing that is a little bit different about widowhood, though, is that there's not like dad couldn't go, right? It's whoever, it's all or nothing, right? And we sent grandparents and all of those things, but it just made my heart sad to be missing that. But what has not made my heart sad is to be able to meet we have so many listeners and friends here in Canada that we've been able to connect with. So that's been so great, and we've met a bunch of new friends too.
Yes. Yesterday we were talking about this at our table for sure. Like some of our good friends. Hi, Evelyn and Jennifer and Carrie.
Lara.
Yes.
Julie. Lots. Marshall.
So many people. Lara is my special best friend because she let me use her dead husband's cell phone to get to the skate park. Oh yeah, guys, I went to a skate park. I have to, or I get in a very scary place in my head, and so I think widows understand that. So I was gone for part of the day yesterday, so I didn't go to some of the classes, but yeah, I met some new friends.
We missed you at tacos.
But guess what?
What?
Here's the weird thing about when I go out on my random adventures. I am turning into my dad, I guess, and I just start talking to people, and they're like, who is this person?
Pork products?
Well, it's easy to talk to people, like, if it's a little kid with a parent, it's easy.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like, a scary, creepy old man that's, like, going to be a pedophile. No. No. So, but it's funny because there is this little girl that actually was working on the same skills that I was. She was 9 years old. And her dad wasn't allowed in the skate park because he had to sign a waiver and be skating too to help her drop in. And so she wanted she was at the end phases of that, and so she needed someone just to hold her hand for a second and then drop in. So I'm like, oh, I'll help you. And then we all became friends and skated the rest of the day together. Turns out they're musicians.
Oh,
both of them. The little girl too.
What
they're doing an album and stuff.
What did they play?
Everything.
Oh, they were those people.
Yeah, producers and stuff. So I made some new friends. And then at the end, before we left, the guy's like, why are you here? I'm like, okay, well,
This is always the answer. It's always prefaced with, I'm going to tell you it's going to be okay.
Yes.
You're going to have some feelings about what I'm just about to say.
It's okay. Don't be sad. It's really sad. I'm sorry. This is what it is. My husband died, and I'm here for a widow conference and presenting and stuff. And so they're always and Canadians are so nice, that they're just like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, yes. But Anyway, it opened up conversation at the very end of the day so tell me more about the widowhood thing. My mother-in-law is a widow, and we noticed that at the beginning she tended to identify only as being a widow. And I thought that was like a really good question for somebody that's kind of on the outside to ask, because we've talked about it before. You and I have, and so it facilitated conversation and was like a good thing. So spreading the word of the widow, helping other people know kind of about it and that it's okay and that there are conferences for it, and it was good. So even though I didn't get to do tacos, sorry guys.
The tacos were a disaster. They tasted yummy, but anyway, it's a thing.
I was a widow missionary, I guess. And a really annoying person that just like said, can I hang out with you guys here at the skate park?
Well, good job, Mel.
Thanks.
So one question we get at Camp Widow often is, do they pay for us to come? And the answer is no.
Nope.
We pay our way to come to Camp Widow and to speak, and we volunteer our time. And you know how we are able to do that?
Y'alls.
The people who support us on Patreon make it possible for us to be able to come to Camp Widow and to be able to reach more people in the widowed state. So thank you so much. If you guys want to keep the podcast going and want us to be able to keep spreading the good word, find us on patreon.com/WWDN. We have 4 different tiers. What are the tiers like, Mel?
The tiers are amazing, and they're as low as $5 a month. Do you know how many bags of ketchup chips you can get with $5?
Not that many.
Probably like 1.5.
Yeah.
But still, for a whole month, that's pretty great. That provides basic support for the podcast, such as keeping the hosting going so that we can still be on platforms and pay for those things. The $10 level a month helps Anita get a babysitter. It gives you ad-free episodes and a shout-out in episode. And then we also have $20 a month, the widow wife, and even higher than that, the dead husband.
All right, we're going to do our shout-out now. We're going to start with our secret dead husband, and I feel like she has to be. When the widows are sitting cheek to cheek.
Wait, widow. I'm a widow. And my heart beats so that I can hardly speak because my husband is dead. Okay, next is Constance Dahlbeck.
David.
Dawn Satterwhite.
Emily Wesenberg. Hello.
She brought her existential crisis done.
And a very shiny dress.
Yes. Gail Bell.
Heather Mullins.
Ivan the Misner.
Kat.
Krista Waite.
Maya Glasser.
Teal Neal, who was the life of the party every day.
And the Kit Kat giver.
And also, sorry, Neil, that I traumatized you when I told you my story of my trauma.
Sam Finlayson.
Amber Bela.
Amy Hartman Martell.
Amy Neal.
Ashley Hahn.
Barbara Schneeberger.
Brandy Younger.
Brittany Pedro.
Chris Steffen.
Cindy Wilkerson.
Danielle Ketterberg.
Not a Debbie Downer.
Dennis Brazo.
Jean Marie Massey.
Jen O'Brien.
Jenny Taylor.
Jennifer Beal.
Jennifer Brown.
Jenny Wang.
Jesse Johnson.
Carol Schultz.
Kelly Ford.
Kirsten Stromberg Clausen.
Laura Aguirre Penner. Hi, we're with you today.
Lauren Old.
Lisa Hardman Powell.
Lou Clausen.
Auntie Marie Hoffman.
Mary Catherine Anderson.
Meg Murto.
Patricia Wiest.
Rachel Barbosa.
Woo-hoo. Sarah Morris.
Simone Fu.
Sunshine Haven.
The Sylvia.
Taylor Snyder.
The Winehouse Karen. Who is in not Canada. Yeah.
Amy Burke.
Anne Drennan.
Anna Tracy.
Audrey Henniger.
Christina Scambato.
Christine Anderson.
Sydney Raynaud.
Connie Remich.
Don Barber.
Debbie Fells.
Deborah Westwood.
Diana Becker.
Doris Reichel.
Eileen Stevens Dem.
Emily Toledo.
Eric Vandermeulen.
Aaron Posick.
Gabe Lozano.
Gia Benoit.
Gina Haas.
Ian Cini.
Ileana Bell.
Jackie.
The Jane.
Another secret best
Patron. Yes. Jennifer Davis.
Jenny Armstrong. Hi, Jenny.
Yes. Jenny Barrow.
Jocelyn Milo.
Johnny Walker.
Julie Stevenson.
Karen Ochoa.
Karina Jacobo.
Kathy Murray, our spreader of the word. We love you.
Katie Getz.
Katie Radcliffe.
Kara Scara.
Kevin Ferry.
Chris Morgan.
Laura Kiwi.
Hello. Lindsay
Oh,
Kanopka.
you got it. Marjorie Lewis.
Wow. Marianne Hammond.
Marianne McDonald.
Mary McGowan.
Megan Montague.
Melissa Bowers.
Melissa Hancock.
Naomi Brown.
Rebecca Olamaker.
Becky Ziva.
Robin Flam.
Stacy Saywert.
Tammy Teravis.
Tara Wallace.
Judy Malkin. Not once, but twice. Trenton Thompson.
Val Backer.
And belated birthday from Halloween, Wendy.
Thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. We could not do any of this without you.
Truly, truly. It's so true.
Yeah.
Because, guys, like, I'm really in the poverty level. I don't have to pay anything for insurance next year. I just got my statement. Yes, I got my taxes back.
All right. If you guys don't want to join us on Patreon, what else can they do?
They could buy us tacos. Buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonow.
And if neither of those things work, will you please just give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts? It really helps people to find us when they need us. Do you love how my voice is very sexy today? I think I've been talking too much and sleeping too little.
Probably.
Yeah.
Just don't be sick and don't, like, cough on me because you're so close to me.
Okay.
No offense. Actually, I don't really care. Also, if there are any of you that would like to sponsor the podcast in a different way,
let us know.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
For example, if you have a business that needs ads, if you want to just be a donor, we will take anything. We're trying to help everybody. It's actually super interesting, and I love hearing the stories of how things are kind of spread through the widowed web. Because, and I think it was Carrie that I was talking to yesterday about this. She was telling me, like, don't underestimate what you guys do. It's so helpful. And, like, when we're just at our computers recording, talking to each other, and, like, our lives are insane or we're in the basement, it's easy just to be like, does this even matter? Does this help people? Why are we doing this? And so when we hear you guys tell us your personal stories of how it's helped, or Kathy told us a super awesome story about how she referred a friend to join, and because she had to go find the obituary link, it caused her to find some messages from friends that had pictures that she didn't know of her husband. And so usually I get super terrified about the link because we get a lot of pushback from people that are angry about that. But it's nice to hear that even something like that is positive and it helps somebody to reconnect with their husband's people and get some photos they didn't know existed. So thank you for telling us those things. And if you have stories on how this has helped you and you're like, oh, I want to reach out, but, like, they don't care. We care. We, like, really kind of need the encouragement because doing this podcast is, although exciting, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot that we get pushback from, and we're discouraged just in life in general. So thank you.
Speaking of reaching out to us, remember, we are collecting stories of awkward encounters that you've had. We have quite a few. We would love to get a few more. If you've already told us the awkward story and you think we will remember it, we will not. And also, we wouldn't share it if you didn't specifically tell us to share it. So if you shared it in the Widow Wives Club or you've told it to us before, don't assume that we'll use it, because we will only use it if you, like, expressly give us permission. So if you've got an awkward story where somebody said something really awkward to you, or you said something to them and it was really awkward, we want to hear it. The stories we've gotten have been amazing, and we're going to share those on an upcoming episode, and we're going to do a few versions of those. But this time we're looking for awkward stories, so send them on in.
Yes, and you guys, we're not going to say your name with the story unless you give us permission, because we would like to protect your identity and not make you feel bad.
All right.
That's it.
I love it. It's going to be so fun.
Oh, now we have to go back to the States.
Let's get to our episode. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're two Canadian widows today.
Yes.
And we're just trying to figure out
No.
No.
Sorry. What do we do about this?
Don't.
We have a new friend, Anita.
I love it when we get to have a new friend.
I know, and we don't even know her.
So let's get to know her, shall we?
Yeah? This is Debbie Weiss, right?
Yes.
Yes. I was thinking Edelweiss, but not Weiss. Weiss. Hi, Debbie. Where are you from?
Hi, Mel and Anita. I'm talking to you from beautiful Benicia, California.
Where's that?
That is about 20 minutes away from Napa. And it's on a bay. It's Benicia Bay. So I'm in the northern Bay Area in California.
We have lots of listeners who will want to come visit you if you're close to Napa.
And some that live around that area. So nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
Are you from California, or did you grow up somewhere else and end up in California?
I was born in Connecticut and spent my first 4 or 5 years in New York, but my dad's a scientist and he worked at Livermore Lab. So I've lived in Northern California, actually the San Francisco Bay Area, since I was 4 or 5.
Wow. What kind of scientist? That sounds cool.
My father is actually a nuclear physicist.
No way.
Way.
Whoa.
Are you super smart, or did the apple fall far from the tree?
Oh my gosh.
It's a hard one. I'm reasonably smart. My dad is a genius. I'm not a genius, but I have reasonably decent test scores.
Okay, great. We can continue this
I think she's smart, I would venture to guess.
Probably.
Well, Debbie, you're like us, right? You're a widow.
Yep.
Shocker. That's what I hear. So, will you tell us about your person? Who is your person? What were you all about? How long were you together? All those things.
Well, my person was named George. I met him when I was 7 years old, and he was 11. I mentioned my dad. Well, George's mom was also a scientist, and our parents worked together. So we met at his parents' pool party in the Northern California burbs. And we started dating when I was 17 and he was 21. I was a high school senior. He was my prom date. Mm-hmm. And then we were together for 32 years until he died of cancer in 2013.
Oh, man.
So you've been a widow almost 10 years. You're further out than us. I'm almost 5. Anita's almost 4?
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
You're not almost 5, Mel. Oh, yeah,
yes,
you are
I
almost
am.
5. In November, right?
I mean, I know I don't act like it because I'm not okay at all. But okay, well, this is great. I mean, it sucks that you're a widow, but it's good that you have some time under your belt. Maybe you can help us to not be such disasters and give us some advice.
Oh, it's so hard not to be a disaster for maybe the first 5, 6 years. I mean, it just takes so long for your brain to come back and for the world to feel like it's got its equilibrium back.
Okay, so like I'm on track, you're saying?
You're probably on track, yeah.
Okay, good.
Debbie, will you tell us a little bit more about George? What did he do? What was he like?
Sure. George was an engineer. When I was dating him and he was 21, he was in the senior year of majoring in engineering at UC Berkeley. And then after that, he was a software architect. That's what he eventually did. He was a software tech guy in the Silicon Valley. At the time he passed, he was actually the tech lead on Quicken for Windows, Quicken financial product. He worked on that. What was kind of sad is over time, poor George became a bit of a workaholic, which was unfortunate. He was amazing at his job. He was an astonishing coder. And he could build almost anything. He grew up with a dad who was super handy, and George started out in hardware, so he could build computers. He was just amazing that way. He was also a do-it-yourselfer, so our house was kind of like, when he passed, it was all full of unfinished projects that we'd have more time to work on. We had a stereo, an audio-visual system that was in pieces and too complicated for me to use. So there were certainly downsides to that. George had a great sense of humor, and he was super likable. Even though he was successful at his job, he was super kind to everybody and was always helpful. He was there, the guy who you could call with bug fixes overnight, or if you needed furniture moved. He was that guy.
Oh man! And what happened? How did he become? How did you get his cancer diagnosis? What led you to that, and what kind of cancer did he have?
Well, this was not good. In 2009, a while ago, George was working on the project, and he comes home one day and he says, "Quicken shipped for the day. Congratulations. This is the great moment." And says, "Tomorrow I'm going to the hospital." I'm like, okay. He was about 49 then, 50. Okay, in the hospital. And he comes back the next day, says they're running tests. I'm like, okay. And I didn't think anything was wrong. I had no idea anything was wrong. But a week later, we find out he has metastasized male breast cancer.
Whoa.
I know.
Okay, wait, though. So you didn't know anything was up, and then he just drops on you that he's going to just jaunt over to the hospital for a few tests? Or did you know something was up before that?
I didn't know anything was up before that. He was working crazy hours. I mean, he was just working. He didn't seem real robust in terms of like, we used to walk a lot together. He didn't seem to enjoy walking. He had a sports car that had a stick shift. He wasn't driving the stick, that type of stuff. But I thought he was just really out of shape, honestly, because he worked so much. And he was overweight, which is fine. I could live with that. I loved him. We loved to cook together. And so I didn't know. And I don't even know that he really knew. He just had something on his chest that hadn't been healing. And he kind of tried to explain it away. So he was, I think, pretty shocked too. Yeah. The hard part was he was a control freak. So he didn't let me in on his treatment. One of the first things he said was, I will always tell you the truth, but you're going to hear it from me. And he pretty much shut me out of his treatment. He drove himself to chemo, to radiation. He'd go to work after radiation. After chemo, he'd get groceries. Things didn't seem to affect him very much. But he shut me out of his treatment. He wouldn't let me go with him to the doctors or anything like that. So that wound up pretty crazy by the end.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Was he doing that to protect you, do you think? Did he think that would help you to deal with it better?
I think so. I think he did feel that I needed protection. He got his chemo and all at the same hospital where my mom died. My mom died when I was 10, and after a brief illness. So I guess he thought he was being protective. I didn't quite understand it because I'm a former lawyer, so I'm most of the time a fairly competent person. But I guess he thought I needed protection.
And you guys did not have kids, correct?
Correct.
Okay. How old were you when you became a widow?
I was 49.
So I'm a little bit curious about the male breast cancer. That's not very common, and I think a lot of people don't even know that's a possibility. So I'm sure you guys were just floored with that diagnosis. Like, I didn't think that men were able to get breast cancer. Did you even know that was a thing before he was diagnosed?
I didn't know it was a thing. It wasn't something I thought about. I mean, I got my yearly mammogram, but I hadn't really thought about it. I forget at the time I did some research, and it was something like less than 2% of all breast cancer is in men. I mean, at the time, considering I said my mom died when I was 10, I thinking selfishly just considered myself extraordinarily unlucky, not to mention poor George. But the other thing, though, he did have 2 uncles who died of lung cancer prematurely. Now, they were in their respective 70s, non-smoker, health nut, and 80s, lifetime smoker, not health nut. But both his uncles had died of lung cancer. And by the time George was diagnosed, the breast cancer had spread. So it does seem that maybe there was a history in the family.
Your mom died when you were 10. That's not okay at all. And then your husband dies when you were 49. Did you have any bitterness, or did it bring up some stuff about your mom's death too? Because I'm just curious, because I have some friends that have had multiple close deaths like that, and that's hard stuff. What was it like for you? And what is it still like for you?
Well, it was especially hard because George and I led really isolated lives. We weren't social people. We're both only children. My dad was an only child. I had a really small family. I didn't have close friends. George was my best friend. George, his colleagues were his life. he used to joke that his colleagues, his children were the folks he managed at work, were the engineers he managed. So when he died, I was on my own. I didn't have close friends. I could be alone for days on end. That was the hardest part. And it did bring up my mom's death, of feeling like a child, of being just really alone and not knowing what to do or where to go or anything. It brought that up. And it was weird because it was like, bargaining, right? It was like when my mom died, my dad's amazing. He was a super parent. And when you're 10, maybe you don't think about things that way. Like, am I cursed? Why me? It was easier to absorb, but somehow at 49, it was much harder to work through.
I'm wondering about what it felt like right after he died. Did you feel a sense of loss of purpose or loss of identity? It sounds like, you didn't have children. You had a small or non-existent group of friends. It's you and George, and now it's just you. What do you do now with that? Who are you now?
That was hard because I was Mrs. George. I retired from practicing law when I was 40. So this is coming up, 9 years later. So I don't have that professional identity. And I was pretty happy being an unemployed slacker. I still am with that. I was good with all that leisure. I gardened, I exercised. I did a lot of home projects with George. We spent whatever free time he had together. Yeah, I felt very lost. And more than the identity, which is more abstract, it was just the complete aloneness. Like, I'm sure, you wake up alone. Mel, you don't have kids. To say you wake up, you'd wake up, you'd be alone, right? You could end your day alone. In between, you might be alone. It was just insane to go from having someone I shared everything with, who was there almost all the time, to just this emptiness.
Did you have much of a role as a caretaker? It sounds like he kind of kept you a little bit at arm's length. Did you take on that role as things progressed for him?
Yes, I did. And it was do we get to curse on this?
Say whatever you want.
It was a shit show because his instinct to protect me we had about 4 good years. And then about 2012, fall of 2012, he started to decline. It was amazing that he lasted that long. His oncologist and all was amazed that he could function so well, but he was declining. He was going to die. And he went into a denial. I think his protection of me turned into denial. So he thought he was recovering or that he was going to be okay, but his body was disintegrating. And he turned down the kinds of care a hospital could offer: nurses, home visitation, palliative care, ultimately hospice. He turned all that down. So it was just me. And I was really freaked because I'm not a nurse, and I was really scared I was doing the wrong things and watching his body decline like that. It was really awful.
I have a question about that, and this might be a sensitive topic. And if you don't want to answer this, then you can just tell me to jump off the ledge. But did that bring with it any amount of discord between the two of you? Did it really stress your relationship in a way that you weren't on the same page about his prognosis and what you thought his care should be and what he thought his care should be? Because that's a really hard situation to be in.
It was, and it did strain our relationship very, very much because he wanted, again, he's an only child. His parents lived nearby, and he chose to keep them out of it. He didn't want them to know he was sick. They ultimately figured it out because they looked terrible one holiday we had them over. But having to be complicit in that was awful. It was so, yeah, we did have discord because I wanted us to get more help. And eventually we got help a couple mornings a week, but it wasn't the kind of help we needed. He wouldn't get the hospital bed, the things that we really needed to do, or involve his parents who could have helped us more and who wanted to be with him. So yeah, I lost my best friend when he got sick. We were on opposite sides. I was trying to tell him, you've got to see reality. You've got to look at this. And he just wouldn't.
A follow-up to that, I think that's just got to be really hard because he's the one who's sick and he's the one who's suffering. His body is suffering. but then he's putting all these expectations on you to care for him. And it's like, well, actually, I need help in this situation too. And I think that's just got to be, and I think a lot of people go through this where the expectation and the caretaking becomes really hard. And the person who's sick, it's like, you don't want to fight with them either because they're sick and they're dying. And it puts you in this really weird atmosphere of like, how do we deal with this? And it's rough. And so I'm so sorry that you went through that.
So as somebody who was an only child, is an only child, and isolates and retired at 40, how did you get any support? Like, what did you do? Will you walk us through maybe the first acute time after he died with somebody with your personality and your circumstances? Like, what was that like for you?
Well, it was terrible. But in a funny way, what I did, my dad and my stepmom at the time, my stepmom and dad were having some health problems, but they lived 10 minutes away. So they had some care at home, but they were, fully mentally functioning. So they helped me a lot. I would just go over there most afternoons and hang out into the evening, or I'd drive over there. I was having anxiety attacks after he died. So I would drive over there at night if I couldn't sleep, which was often. I was having real, genuine heart pounding, the room spinning anxiety attacks after that. I kind of got through the beginning by being super efficient. The house was falling apart. The bathroom was leaking into the dining room. We had a lot of deferred maintenance with, cancer care. And I had a lot of anger, which I took out by basically cleaning out the house and getting rid of piles of, years. I lived there 25 years, and sort of fixing things up. And I was gardening at 5 a.m. And then I would go on to the phone calls and handling the estate and the paperwork. And then I would go over to my dad's. And then the nights were just kind of gruesome. I mean, I would watch movies and eat takeout and just kind of zone until I fell asleep. I drank Manhattans and a lot of wine until I just kind of pass out, and then I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and I had really bizarre sleep patterns.
Did you reach out to try and connect with people, maybe friends? And I mean, how did you try and make yourself not lonely?
Well, for a few months, I kind of lived with it. I went on long walks and things. I belonged to like a gym where I did like a small personal training group with a few women, and sometimes we'd go walking, So I had a few connections. But then I started to get more intentional about it. That was probably more like, 5 months out, I had some of the estate stuff done. And then I just started, this is really weird. I just kind of randomly started to go to things. Like like George had a sports car. So I joined this car club. And that's crazy because I'm not much of a driver. But they did breakfast on Saturday morning. So every Saturday morning, I had a breakfast to go to and people to talk to. And then usually there was an activity after that, which was car related. But, that would kind of take care of a Saturday. And then, I joined the local Rotary Club. Again, that's really not for me. I'm not real conservative. But again, that was one night a week. That was dinner out where you put on something besides sweatpants. And I tried to interact with people, and that was okay. And from there, I got back into writing, which I'd always loved, and was taking a class before George died. And that resonated. So then I'd had a writing class a week, and some of the more serious folks in that class, lovely people, had a writing group, and they invited me to join. So then I had kind of like assignments, I'm good with assignments. And so I would, twice a week, I turned in writing and I met with people. So there was something. I got into evening yoga. I don't know if you guys have found this, like you take something in the evening to cut the nighttime down, like yoga at 5:30. I'm not going to drink or eat too much first. Chat with folks after class, drag this out. I'm home 7:45. That's 2 hours till I can go to sleep. But yeah, it was just kind of like trying to live in little increments. Does that make sense? And get some kind of a flow, but just some kind of increments to interact with people.
I love that. That's like super brave, just to go to a car club thing and a Rotary Club thing, and you don't.
I just did.
Really know. I love it.
No, I didn't. I just went. I just went to stuff.
Do you think that it was helpful that you didn't know anybody in a way, because then people wouldn't ask you about your widow status?
Yes, it was actually it was kind of helpful that way because people didn't know me, so they didn't know me and George. I mean, we had a few old friends, and I did go to a dinner with them years after he passed, and that was super hard because, there were these 3 couples who'd all gone to high school together, but where was George? That I preferred I didn't like being on my own because, I lived in a pretty conservative town, so most people were married. And it was hard for me not to say I'm a widow. It's like, oh, where's your husband? Like, well, I'm widow. And then I would, try to sound pleasant because I was at the Rotary Club with strangers. So you wouldn't be like, oh, I'm a widow, God damn it. What do you want to know? So, cheerful widow, which was kind of weird, but I think it was probably helpful to do something new on my own.
Yeah. So did you start dipping your toe back in the dating pool? And how did that go? Or is going? Or did go?
Or did not go?
Oh, well, okay. Here's the embarrassing part, which I'm going to share with you guys because I think people should know. I actually had a thing with one of George's caregivers who was a younger guy, way younger. And that was about 5 months after he died, 4 months. And it was wrong. At first, it was amazing to feel alive again. Like I would eat food with another person. He cooked. George cooked. I don't cook. And it was like, I'm alive. And I had a body again, after being a caregiver to someone with cancer. But the guy became kind of oddly controlling. And that got bad. Not terribly bad, but I had to end it. I had to be really careful and end it. And then I went back because I was so lonely, and then I ended it again. So that was kind of an epic fail, but I feel like we need to be honest about our experimentations in this and how hard it is. But then I got grief counseling, and that was super helpful because I remember talking to the grief gal and going, I feel like I'm cheating on my husband. And this guy had a girlfriend at the time, I'm embarrassed to admit. And she said, he's in his 40s and you're a recent widow, and he shouldn't be picking up on a recent widow. He's, that's not your fault. That's, you're super vulnerable. So that made, and then 14 months after George died, I started dating again. I went on apps and, bought the push-up bra and the concealer and, tried to date like a normal person.
Yeah, which is so funny that now that's the normal way of dating, is the apps way. So tell us how that went, or is going, or didn't go.
I think the theme of this episode is shit show. Because the guys were such problems that I wound up writing. That was actually how I wrote a book. I joke that I wrote it to help to warn other midlife women about the exceedingly poor quality of middle-aged men these days. You guys are a bit younger than I am, but I seem to catch a generation of men who were ridiculous. Somehow they seemed to think they were little boys, but they were in their 60s or 50s. And yeah, I wrote about it. But the other problem is, since I hadn't dated since I was 16 in 1980, I didn't know what to look for. Red flags, I'd give somebody a second try. I was looking for people who looked really good on paper. That wasn't the way to go. Just because somebody was a doctor or a lawyer like I am doesn't mean they're able to connect. So it was disturbing. I met a few nice people I didn't click with. But
tell us a couple of the disaster stories. We need to hear them.
The worst people you met online.
Yeah.
That's what we need to hear.
Okay. I'll give you 2. First one, he's not the absolute worst, but it was ironic. It was my first real date after George had died. I was on JDate, which is a Jewish dating network. And it's tame compared to, like Match or something. And I meet this guy. He's an Alec Baldwin lookalike. He's, great, but fit. Gym time, mortgage broker, MBA. I'm excited. We meet a few times. He seems cool. We go out to a romantic dinner in San Francisco. This time I really do have, the push-up bra and all going. And he come back to my place and he says, I need you to know I've been really unhappy for a long time. I think, oh, maybe I can bring him joy. And he says, I need to tell you about the woman who ruined my life. And then he went through about 5 of these, and he was staying over on the couch, but he lived 3 hours away. So, the next morning we went back into the women who ruined his life. It was so awful. It was so depressing. And he thought he was normal. Like, he didn't realize he was an exercise in, bad psychology or something. He was just, and there's like, you don't want to see me again? When I didn't, I was like, no, I don't. And that it was awful.
Did you find that a lot, that people who were in the dating arena really needed a therapist and not a date?
Yes. I found that a lot. Same with the second guy I dated, who was a very wealthy, successful artist who had his own foundation and mommy and anger issues. Yeah, we never resolved the Oedipal complex there. Yes, a lot of these people did need therapy, and the way women provide emotional labor, they seem to think that the woman is there to provide emotional labor and therapy. My opinion.
Question for you. Did you have any negative reactions from people when they found out that you were a widow?
Well, by the time I meet somebody online, you can tell from my profile I'm a widow.
Okay.
And so that wasn't too bad. Well, what I didn't like, sometimes you'd meet somebody like not dating, but like the Rotary Club or something, and they'd be like, you would go, oh, I could never do that. That's my worst nightmare. I'm sure you get this. And you're like, no, you're the emblem of death to them. You just want to be like, well, okay, you would get through this. You just wouldn't like it very much,
Just like all of us.
Right. So that was, just kind of being that. And occasionally, I don't know if you've gotten this, but occasionally I would see a married woman or a partnered woman kind of looking at me like, yeah, come on, hubby, time to go.
Like you're a threat to them.
Yeah,
to their
it was very rare, but I did see it.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that a little bit, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
You have to tell us your second story, though. You only did one story of a terrible date, and I need to hear the second one. You said you'd give us 2.
Okay, I'll give you a second one. I don't know that it was really that terrible, but it was the thing that got me a modern love column in the New York Times.
Oh, whoa.
Okay, then it's good.
So I actually, again, I'm a nice, Jewish girl, brought up pretty conservatively, though not religiously. And when I was online, this one guy really wanted to meet me, and he was polyamorous. And he had an Ivy League education, and he was a doctor with an MBA, but he had retired from that to train to be a tantric sex instructor. And
okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And he really seemed to he liked me along with other women. And I wanted monogamy, and he was a big mansplainer. Mansplainer.
Boo.
Boo. Yeah. Yeah. And also kind of this idea that when you leave, like if you're the Tuesday night girl, like you shouldn't show up, you shouldn't really bother until the next Tuesday, maybe. So the
world is so weird, you guys.
It is weird. No, it is weird. I'm sorry. You want to go out back in the world. I did find a good partner. Spoiler alert. I did find a good partner. We've been together 4.5 years. So this has a happy ending and can offer encouragement.
Oh, good.
Okay. How did you find him?
Yeah, we need to hear about that.
It was online on a dating app, OkCupid. At this point, I'd been dating for like 5 years, and I didn't know what to do. I seemed too old fashioned for the dating world. I wanted a real relationship and someone you have a life with. And, not somebody who wants you and 8 other women, or wants you and unfortunately remind them of their mother or something. But I was online one morning. I just did this through perseverance. I would just spend like 15 minutes a day looking through profiles, looking at messages. And I saw one morning I got a message that said, are those Vans with skulls you're wearing in that picture? And it was a picture I had online of me with these shoes. And I answered him, yeah, they are. I said, oh, I like those. I like them. I think I want to get a pair. Okay. And then from there, we started chatting, and this turned out to be my person, who was kind of old fashioned like I am, and kind and chivalrous and had the traits that I wanted.
What's his story?
Let's see. He is 3 years older than I am, so he's 62. He's a realtor. Um, he had a short marriage and just never found his person in life, which was interesting. But like me, he wanted to have a life with someone and a home together and be there for each other. And that just kind of worked. Our first date was 12 hours.
Wow. When I have a question, because a lot of times on the dating apps, people can match with somebody and then you just message forever and ever and ever, and they could just sit in the inbox. How did the progression of things work with you two? Like, did you message for a while and then call, or did you immediately say, "Hey, let's get on a phone call"? Like, how did that work?
I think we messaged a few times and decided to meet for tea. And he was going to come to me where I live. We live about 35 minutes apart. And at that point, we kept texting before we met because we knew that we were both not real cheerful then. I'd had a horrible breakup and his mom had died the previous year. So he was a morning person, which I'm not. And he would go out for morning runs and I don't run. And he would send me pictures over text of like sunrises and things. And it was all way too cheerful for me, but I let that go and we met. But yeah, the messaging thing is a mess on dating apps, and I don't like do dating advice, but one of the things you need to do if someone keeps messaging is just going, "Hey, let's have a call." And if they don't want to do that, they're probably married, drop them. Let's text for a while. Don't. I wasted way too much time when I was on those apps with texting and then it just drops. Or the guy says, "I've met somebody,"
How it seems like app and online dating is a skill set that a lot of us don't have. How do you learn to do that? Like, there needs to be a class or a coach. I'm sure there are. I shouldn't have said that out loud because now everybody's gonna be like, "I do that." But how did you learn how to figure that out? Was it just trial and error?
There are a lot of dating coaches, which I'm discovering lately. I did things through trial and error. I just did it through trial and error, and I wasted too much time with phone calls with people I wasn't interested in. I think women are also taught to be polite, so it's hard for us to just say no. Like, "Oh, okay, I'll have a call," and it's like 2 soul-sucking hours later. It's like, "I wish I hadn't done that," But some of it's pretty obvious. I've seen if some schmuck is like, "Oh, I can only meet here," and it's like, you just type, "Are you married?" I basically just got pretty straightforward about it. And I think that's what you have to do. And if someone's like, "Well, I don't have time to meet," you say, "Okay, well, why don't you get back in touch with me when you do?" Then you'll probably never hear from them again.
Delete.
But it really is a skill set in terms of not wasting your time with a lot of guys who I don't understand why. It doesn't even dirty or anything, just like texting. Like you're in bed and you're texting with a stranger or something. And I mean, I do feel like we need to like set things up so that you have your boundaries, and online dating isn't a second job. It should just be, a couple messages, a phone call, and if that works, coffee. And all of that should be about 3 hours in total. And if somebody wants to prolong things, then the answer is, well, you get back to me when you have time. Or, I would joke, I'd say I'm a writer. I really don't type a lot. Because I wasted time with people who had like these interview lists. Where do you want to be? It was one guy, he was a dick. He's like, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Kierkegaard or Nietzsche." I'm a pseudo intellectual, so I got kind of pulled into this stuff. And then we were going to meet, and he's like, "Okay, well, when are you going to drive over to where I live?" And I was like, never,
Jeez.
Oh.
I can spot an emotionally okay man from their like 40s to 60s in a second, because I don't know, I have some special skill set of attracting those, and they give me a certain feeling whenever I'm around them. And I know that like they're not all like this, but I think I kind of know what you're talking about with some of these stories, Debbie. And it's just like, oh man, guys, go work on yourselves. And let's not trauma bond over things. Like, I think that's something that's important to have a healthy, any sort of relationship with somebody. It's like, yeah, we have our stuff we're working on, and we're all working on hard things, but like when you get dumped on for 5 hours just complaining about exes or whatever, like that is not healthy for
No,
anyone.
it really isn't. And that one makes me especially sick because I don't want to bash a woman I don't know. I think that's nasty. Like, oh, wow, I want your dick so much that I'm going to bash other women so we bond. I mean, it's really offensive, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, especially also, we're widows. We would like our husbands back. We don't think that way. But I mean, even if I did, I never, you don't bring up, anyway, that's one of my real pet peeves.
So how do you integrate your first husband into your current relationship? How has that gone with your new partner? Do you talk about him? Is it something that he's okay with? Is it, tell us how that works.
That works great. That all worked fine. With other people, it didn't. I got the feeling that they compared themselves to George, which was hard because George was objectively successful. And he did a lot for me. And I remember one guy being like, you're never going to find a guy like George, or you shouldn't expect anything like George. Or it's like, great. So all men are worse than George. Okay, terrific. George was amazing, but I did feel like a couple guys really wanted me to know that, never going to have that again. But my current partner's name is Randall. And I talk about George a lot because he was 32 years of my life. So that's, and I was, I knew his parents for a really long time. And we just kind of integrate George into our lives. I'll say, well, this reminds you of when George did this, or we'll say, oh yeah, George cooked that. I mean, he's just kind of an absent friend. There's nothing hard about it.
I love that terminology you just used. I don't think I've heard that before. He's an absent friend.
Yeah.
So
I think with the right person, it's okay. Randall loves George too. We both feel bad that he died at 49, and we both love him. And we a couple times, when it's his birthday, we go out to this restaurant and we order a hot fudge sundae because George liked hot fudge sundaes. And it's fine.
Yeah, I love that he's not scared of the memory that George existed. I think people can get so threatened by that. What does your grief look like now at almost 10 years out? We know like the first part so horrible. How is it now?
It's honestly better. It is better. But it took a really long time. You guys aren't as far out. And honestly, my grief got better when I started to do some more intense things. I got really into hiking. So weekends, I was cranking at that. I got a master's degree in writing in 2020.
Nice.
You did some hiking and then you got your master's degree. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I got a master's degree. And that I was far enough out then I could concentrate, because for the first 5 years, 4, I couldn't concentrate. I remember the first couple, I couldn't read a book that was anything but, a few pages at a time. I couldn't focus. I had PTSD my first year. So the grief is much better, but it's also better because I have a new life. It got better last year because I moved. I left the home that I'd lived in for 27 years and the home I lived in with George, and moved to a new place with my new partner. And that really helped. I hadn't realized how much I was still living with George in the old house. He wasn't an absent enough friend.
Question. Did you ever get the sound system to work?
No.
That George had?
No, I didn't. I had it fixed up once and it was really out of date. And Randall, my current partner, he's a realtor and he has a great sense of design. And we had this like big old projector sticking out of the ceiling because George really, he turned our living room like a home theater system. And we had, screens, we had speakers. And at one point, Randall looked and said, do you really like what looks like an airplane hanging out of your ceiling? And I just went to a normal system. And when it was funny, because when the home theater guys who helped me, and they helped me also by taking George's stuff and selling it, so I could change things around. And I remember they're like, well, you can get extra speakers for this TV and it can get a higher sound quality. It's like, no, I'm done with that. That is not my world. I am basic.
Okay, well, so give us some information about your book. What is it called and where can we find it?
It's called Available As Is, A Midlife Widow's Search for Love. and you can find it on Amazon. It's right there. But you can also order it. It has a regular distributor. So if it's not at like your local bookstore, you can order it there if you want to support your local independent bookstore.
So what gave you the idea to write the book? Where did it come about in your grief journey, and why?
Well, again, pretty solitary person with insomnia, so I started a blog. Never did real well. It was in 2013, but I started blogging and just kind of my experiences. And then for writing class, I was writing about my experiences. And somehow I decided I wanted to start writing, getting published with those, because I felt like people weren't really talking about the pain of widowhood the way I felt it. I mean, to me, it was devastating. It was dark. And to me, a lot of the writing about it was so cheerful. You'll get better. It'll be fine. And it was like, I remember writing a thing 3 years out saying, I am still in agony. And at the time I was a Huffington Post blogger, and I put that up, and I put up my caregiver's guilt because I felt so awful. I had so much guilt. And I got like 80 comments of other caregivers going, we hope you're okay. You did the best you could. This is what a lot of people have been through. So I just kind of wanted to I think I used my writing to get community, to be honest, and to talk about some of the pain, because I didn't feel that people were really doing that. And from there, I would try to offer modest solutions and a little bit more, upbeatness. And I started to get published places, nothing, a few things. And then I got the New York Times thing. That was about 4 years ago. And that encouraged me to get the master's degree and keep going with the book. And then I just did. It just kind of kept building on itself.
Yeah, people want the resolution in grief. They don't want to hear about the hard parts. They want to hear about how you overcame it and how your life is new and great. And they just want to skip to that. They don't really like the part where you're still in pain. That's icky and uncomfortable.
That's like I wrote about that in my first chapter, actually, where it's like a movie. It's like one of those glossy romance movies, right? And it always starts with the pretty widow, right? And she's like super thin, and she doesn't look like she's been through trauma. And,
her hair's not falling out.
No, her hair's not falling out. Her skin is perfect, right? And then, and then they show like maybe like a montage, like some song is playing, something really sappy. And it shows her maybe visiting his grave and maybe picking a flower or something. And then the rest of the movie, she falls in love, right? And she deals, and then it's a rom-com. But nobody gets through the grief part, right? I mean, it's always like a stage, like a plot device.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It's like a huge piece of your life. It takes years to recover. That's what surprised me. And even when I read books about it, like Grief and Grieving, I didn't realize it would take like 4 or 5 years to start feeling okay again.
I remember like the first time after I became widowed where I encountered something that someone was like, "Here's this terrible thing happen." And then I thought they were going to get into like the depths of the despair and the stuff I was going through. And it just went to, and then I met this person. I was so mad. I was so mad that I had like shut down the rest of the day, like for like 2 days actually. And I had to like take my panic meds because I was like, why does no one talk about this? So on behalf of us and our widowed community, thank you for talking about the things as they are in a real and raw fashion, because it really does a disservice to the world to not talk about it. So we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was kind of part of why I was writing. So thank you. I felt like people weren't kind of getting it, so that we don't get a lot of compassion and people, are you over it? And it's like
shut up.
Yeah. It's like, shut up. This is years. Yeah. This is years. This is medication. This is therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that's one of the reasons that we started the podcast, too, because we're like, what is this? This is very uncool. We're going to talk about it. Everyone needs to know about it. And there have to be people like us. Like, maybe there are only 10. And now we have a bigger community, and we're like, oh, no, okay, good. We're all kind of together in this community in solidarity. And it's been so helpful to find other people in the same situation that have the same feelings, even though circumstances, of deaths are different. So yeah, it's really helpful and integral for healing.
So we started this podcast when I was 9 months out, and Mel, you were about 1.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of our first reviews that we laugh about still was like, this podcast isn't helpful. They're not talking about like how to get over this, basically. You know, they're just talking about how horrible it is.
Well, they said something like, I don't understand why you're talking about these things that have happened to so many people and people have survived it.
Yeah.
It was like
the
biggest
that
slap
person
in the
wanted us to skip to the end too, and we weren't in the end. Like, we were in that very first period of time, and it was like, we're not ready to talk about solutions. We're not ready to talk about resolution. We're not ready to try and figure out. We're just, we're just finding our way. And for people to be like, well, you're not giving me anything to do about this. You're just talking about it, was like, and you are exactly why we need to do this.
That's why you exist, though.
Yep.
Because I remember wanting to wear like a sign that said "Recent Widow, do not agitate." I remember going to store by myself and like when price tag and somebody was glaring at me, somebody could say, "Hey, you know what? I'm eating this thing by myself. This is you're with your wife. People don't get it. I don't think they get how hard it is." And
So we invented a t-shirt, actually, like, that had the same experience when I was, I think it was probably like a month after my husband died. And I was at the grocery store and I was like, this is such a big feat for me. First of all, to leave my bed and then leave the house and then get here. And then the same thing, like you're like describing my situation. And I just wish that I had a shirt that said, "Be nice, my husband is dead." So now we make that shirt and people buy it and wear it around. Anita wears it on the airplane so people leave her alone.
That's brilliant, actually. That's a great idea. You're less likely to, can my child sit next to you in this empty seat? Probably
and then
not.
go like this.
Yep. Like, just don't bother me. Oh my gosh.
I think that's cool, though, because people don't always feel okay. So, I mean, we need to get that out there. You're not okay, but you still have to be out in the world.
Yeah, sucks. Debbie, I think we have an important question to ask you. Do we, Mel?
We have an important question for you. Yes. Ready?
Are you ready for it?
It's very hard. Now, you're going to have to pull from all of your genes from your dad and then your lawyer degree, law degree.
And your MFA and your hiking.
Okay.
Yep. What's your favorite cheese?
Oh
Right?
my God.
See?
For the first time I blanked out.
Told
you. Oh no. Okay. Humboldt Fog.
Ooh. That we've never heard that from anybody yet.
What kind of cheese is that?
I'm here in California, and that is from I forget the brand of cheese, but it's like an artisanal kind of a goat cheese. And it has a little bit of ash that runs through the middle. So like the fog, and it's really good.
Interesting.
Ooh, very cool. Good answer.
We accept your answer.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really delightful to get to talk to you, and I think a lot of people will hear your story and nod to a lot of things that you said. So thank you so much, and remind us what your book is called and where people can find it.
My book is called Available As Is, and you can simplest place to find it is Amazon. You can just look up Available As Is.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we'll link to that in the show notes as well, so you can find it there. Make sure you check out the Widow Wives Club if you want to come and hang out with us and be able to talk to people who are going through your same experiences. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww.
And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Debbie.
We are two young widows and the daughter of a nuclear physicist who married a super smarty pants and then is also a super smarty pants herself. We're all just trying to figure out widow.
We
do
now. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks. And so you don't have to pay extra for that. And you still get great service.
Yep. Anita and I have traveled all over and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.